Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we are moving on to episode 3 of my Becoming a Better Cinephile series. And in this series, we're going to go back to what we did in episode 1, which is on this little graphic right here. I've marked all of the movies that I haven't seen. I've put them onto a wheel, on Wheel of Names is the website. We've put them all on a list there, and we are going to randomize what movie we are going to watch. Here we are here on Wheel of Names. And then over here we've just got, these are all of the movies that I haven't seen from this list, got them all here. We are going to randomize this. So I realized that for me there's a lot of kind of suspense in this moment because I don't know what I'm going to watch yet, but obviously when you've clicked the video you know exactly how this is going to go. Let's give it a couple shuffles, and here we go. Let's see what movie I'm going to watch. It is going to be Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. So I'm trying to, before each of these, I want to kind of like say what I know about each of the movies. I don't know a whole ton about this movie, except that one of my good buddies, I know that he likes the movie. He has, it's one of the movies that he owns. Obviously, I knew it was directed by Stanley Kubrick. How many Kubrick movies have I seen? Off the top of my head, I don't know how many movies by Stanley Kubrick I've seen. Okay, yeah, The Shining. For some reason in my head, that didn't sound right. It didn't sound like that was Kubrick. A lot of like movies that I think would be excellent for this series of going back and watching. Like I've heard of so many of these movies, and I know a lot of them: Eyes Wide Shut, Barry Lyndon, Clockwork Orange, 2001, Lolita, Full Metal Jacket. Didn't mean to skip that. I know a lot of these are kind of considered classic movies. So honestly, a lot of great movies here for potentially for this series. But we are going to start with Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Is that the full title? Anyway, so that is what we're going to check out. So I will be right back with my review for the film. After the insane General Jack D. Ripper initiates a nuclear strike on the Soviet Union, a war room full of politicians, generals, and a Russian diplomat all frantically try to stop the nuclear strike. Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, is a dark comedy from 1964 directed by Stanley Kubrick. The film stars Peter Sellers as Group Captain Lionel Mandrake, President Merkin Muffley, and the titular Doctor Strangelove, George C. Scott as General Buck Turgison, and Sterling Hayden as General Jack D. Ripper. Doctor Strangelove was nominated for 4 Academy Awards: Best Picture, Best Director for Stanley Kubrick, Best Actor for Peter Sellers, and Best Writing, Screenplay, based on material from another medium. Alright, so I just finished watching Doctor Strangelove last night, and then I took a little bit after the film, just kind of thinking about it and kind of putting all my thoughts together here. But it took me a second to kind of to process, I guess, what I watched, because that was so different than I think of what I was expecting going into the movie. Again, in this intro, I mentioned that I didn't know a whole ton about the film. Pretty much to the extent of kind of what I knew is obviously just on the poster of the movie, you kind of have the U.S. flag, and then like Russian flag I think is on the poster, and so I knew kind of like U.S. and Russia were involved, and then I knew there was a bomb in the title of the film. And I mean, and just so with like the political climate that we're in today, my headspace going into this film was I thought I was going to get something a lot more serious and maybe a lot more dramatic than what I ended up getting, because I had no idea that Doctor Strangelove was a comedy. So going in for the first little couple minutes of the film, it took me a little while into the film to kind of understand, should I be laughing as much as I'm laughing? And not full on laughing, but just kind of these chuckles here and there, and thinking like these line deliveries, like it's kind of some of the line deliveries are very comedic. Some of the scenes are set up very comedically, and so it took me a little while to be like, oh, okay, there's just more comedy in this movie than I thought there was. And then obviously as the film goes on, you hit a certain point. I don't know at what point it was necessarily, but you hit a certain point of the movie where it kind of tips over the other way, where it then just becomes like like realizing like, oh, I'm just actually watching a comedy at this point. So again, I just I had no idea going into the film, and I think that works really well for the film. The marriage of comedy and like dramatic, drama. I think that the blend, the marriage between the two is, if it's done well, it works so well, and that's what this film does. Is because as much as it's a comedy, but it's a comedy about like a very serious matter, and so when it becomes a little more serious, when we take moments to be a little bit more, dramatic and not so focused on the comedy, I think that is enhanced because of how much you're laughing at other things, and also when it comes a little more serious, you're a little more focused and you're paying more attention to that. So again, I just think that the marriage between the two of comedy and drama worked very well for this film, and that kind of leads me into kind of the couple of the highlights that I had of the film. The first one really just being Peter Sellers and George C. Scott, specifically Peter Sellers. It took me, I don't know. I mean, it was probably midway through the movie that I kind of was starting to notice that that Mandrake and the president kind of felt similar, and obviously they have no shared scenes together, and so it was kind of like I kind of was like thinking, looking at it, and again, I had no idea. I am not super familiar with Peter Sellers. I probably should look up and see if there's anything Peter Sellers that I've seen. But I just wasn't super familiar with him, so I didn't recognize him. But I just kind of was like noticing that I was like, they felt like they were kind of delivering comedy kind of in the same way. Like it kind of felt like, obviously Mandrake is a little more, he's trying to be serious, but he's kind of got a little bit more comedic element to him, as opposed to like the president, where he's trying to play like the straight man, like he's trying to play it super straight. But that is what's kind of that dry comedy is what's kind of coming off him. And so it was about midway through that I kind of was like noticing that I was like, oh, I think that it's probably the same actor. And I wish I hadn't looked it up at that point, but I looked it up to see at that point, and that's when I learned that he also plays Dr. Strangelove, who hadn't really been on scene yet, on screen yet. So I wish I hadn't looked it up. I need to do a better job of, maybe while I'm watching the movie, just put the phone away and not not be looking things up while I'm watching. But I don't know if I would have guessed that it was doing all three of the roles. But he brings what he does to all three of the roles. He brings something again unique in each of them. Where again, the president is kind of more of the straight man, but he's being put in just kind of again kind of a comedic situation as the movie plays. Obviously would be a very serious situation, but the movie plays it as comedically as possible. And so I think that the way that he's able to kind of play that straight man but bounce off of other characters, or just kind of initiate his own comedy into it, I think works really well.
You bloody bully, you so you guy, not tasting karate before, eh? You war mustering boy.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
For Mandrake, he's realizing that he's in a super serious situation and trying to get the code from Jack the Ripper. So, he's kind of got some comedic elements over there. And then all of a sudden it comes into Dr. Strangelove, which is just a full-blown comedic character who, just the couple scenes that he has, I guess it's maybe like 2-3 scenes that really kind of feature him, but once he's introduced in the film, he is like the character on the screen.
And the prevailing motion will be one of nostalgia for those left behind, combined with a spirit of bold curiosity for the adventure ahead.
And he really just kind of takes over, and so it's just so he really sells the film for me, Peter Sellers, in the sense that I again didn't know this was a comedy, and then you have one guy delivering three very different kind of styles of comedic performances all so well. I think that's what really kind of encapsulate what really kind of saves the film. And then also, while we're talking about the acting performances, I also have to give George C. Scott a lot of credit for his comedic role. It was one of those roles that this is gonna sound really weird, and obviously this is coming from people of this newer generation. Obviously I wasn't obviously this film was 40, 50 years old before I ever even would have like had the chance to see it. So obviously not of not of this just this generation. So I wasn't super familiar with George C. Scott. I wasn't really familiar with this performance or his comedic styling. And so again, this is going to sound so weird, but I had to look it up because there was so much of his mannerisms, so much of what he was doing that I was comparing to present day Tim Robinson, to the point that I thought I was like just envisioning things, and so I had to look it up. And I afterwards, after the movie was over, I was like looking up, and there is entire Reddit pages and there's entire groups of people discussing this, of how much that performance reminds them of like I Think You Should Leave, like sketches. So I'm glad I wasn't alone in that. But that seems so weird to even like be making that connection as you're watching this iconic classic comedic performance and thinking like, oh, this is like that new comedian that's kind of doing stuff on Netflix. But again, I'm glad I wasn't the only one that made that connection. But that is the type of like physical comedy and the type of comedic performance that he delivers.
Well, sir, if the pilot's good, see, I mean, if he's really sharp, he can barrel that baby in solo. I mean, you ought to see it sometime. It's a sight. A big plane like a 52 room. It's jet exhaust frying chickens in the barnyard.
Yeah, but has he got a chance?
Has he got a chance? Hell, he's...
There is, a couple moments where he is kind of bumbling, just in his speech, and then he has so many of like the face mannerisms that, he's contorting his face based on, what people are saying around him, the way that he's kind of reacting, but he's very acting in the face, and then he's just got a lot of kind of like the physical comedy too. Both him and Peter Sellers both have great physical comedy, performances. And so again, I think what makes this film work so well is the fact that it's a comedy, and part of that is because of the two kind of more lead comedic performances from these two characters. I think that works really well. The next strength, or the next highlight of the film for me, again, is also part of the comedy, and it's from Stanley Kubrick's his writing and his direction. The direction I think is maybe a little bit more impressive, but I'm going to start with like the writing first, because the writing is what really kind of sells the film, because it makes it this comedic performance. So after watching, I was kind of looking up and doing some research on the film, and I noticed I didn't obviously didn't know this, and so but what I was learning was that initially based on the source material that this is based off of is a very serious, it's like a serious drama, about I guess essentially the same thing of a nuclear strike accidentally being dropped on Russia, and then kind of the moments of trying to call the bomb, kind of call the plane back, and prevent pretty much the end of the world from happening. And so again, I guess the source material is a lot more dramatic, but then I guess it was like into the writing process that Stanley Kubrick realized that he wanted to make this a little bit more comedic. He wanted to he thought that he was going to be able to get his points across a little bit stronger in more of a comedic nature. So that was that was his intention, to make it a little bit more comedic. And again, I've mentioned this multiple times already, I think that's what made this film work so much better for me. It would have been interesting to see it played as a straight drama. I'm sure I still would have liked it, but I think the fact that it was so comedic, I think, is what kind of made this one of the more iconic films, and a film that a lot of people really love, and a film that people consider like an all-time classic, because I think is that comedy is what kind of elevates it. And again, so that's that was Stanley Kubrick's writing. Going into Stanley Kubrick's direction, of just the way that the performance he's able to get at, because we talk about how great the performances are from Peter Sellers and George C. Scott. Again, I don't think he would have gotten those performances out of those or the reason we're getting those performances from those actors is from the direction of Stanley Kubrick. Obviously, he has a lot of faith and a lot of trust in his actors to let them let them kind of get carried away in some of the scenes and let them, act a little silly, to have that faith in your actors to give those specific performances, and then being able to again craft the film around that was an excellent decision. Also, just so much of what is kind of being shot. From again, continuing on the direction of Stanley Kubrick, the idea of here's how we're going to shoot some of the scenes, here's how we're going to stage some of the scenes. So that kind of goes into the next highlight, as well as sorry, I have to look up his name. It's Gilbert Taylor. His cinematography. There's so many iconic shots in this film. There's so many kind of some of the shots where we're kind of going back to the wide lenses, and we're getting a good look at the whole war room, or kind of the close-ups, the scene where Jack D. Ripper is kind of explaining his reasoning for dropping the bomb, kind of having that low camera angle. So there's so many different things that the direction as well as the cinematography kind of go hand in hand in creating a lot of iconic shots. And then just as far as the cinematography goes, there's so many, I think, iconic looks and so many iconic scenes of the film that are kind of created due to that cinematography. Of obviously, it's super outdated now, but I think back in '64, kind of the iconic shots of just like the plane flying around, obviously, it kind of looks, you can tell, watching it in 2024, you can see how kind of dated some of the shots are. You can see how it just feels like obviously an old film that isn't as, obviously couldn't really get out there and be recording a plane like that, but it's still, I think it creates for the time, it's an iconic look. And then of course just one of the most iconic scenes of the film, and it's kind of, I guess, it's one of those that I didn't, before watching the movie, I didn't necessarily remember this scene as being from the movie, but it's the iconic kind of the bull riding of the bomb scene. Obviously, it's just an iconic shot and just kind of an iconic moment in the film and in cinema history. And again, a couple seconds ago, I mentioned the cinematography, kind of the war room scene of like the pulled back angle where you're getting to see the whole war room set. That brings me to the next thing that I really enjoyed about the film. It's Ken Adams's production design. Again, there's not a whole ton of sets, I would say, in this film. Maybe there's only a couple. Obviously, you kind of have the planes. You have like the inside of their plane. Then you have, I guess there's kind of like the George C. Scott's character, his Buck's bedroom, I guess, kind of in the beginning of the film, and then you have everything kind of happening with Mandrake and Ripper in their offices. So you got a couple of those kind of scenes, but for the majority of the film kind of takes place in this war room, and you get the production design in there is so unique, and it's so beautiful, and just kind of the big round table, just that whole war room set, being able to, again, with that shot, pulling it back where you're able to get a great look at the whole production design, where you've got the table, you've got everyone wrapped around this table, you have the lights are like kind of like the middle of the frame, so it's kind of bringing everything down into kind of like the bottom half of the frame is like a really interesting kind of again shot, but then just an interesting idea of how to like frame this from the production design standpoint. And then obviously you've kind of got like the big board in the background. So there's just so many different things within and then obviously when the characters kind of come back a little bit, you kind of got those bench areas back there. There's just a lot of different things that are going into this war room set that I think the production design really just elevates the film as a whole, and so I really enjoyed that. And then the last thing that I want to kind of highlight is the use of music in the film. Laurie Johnson is the composer. She has a great score for the film. And then, it's obviously not, prevalent throughout the whole film, but, when there is bits of the score, it's done really well. But then again, what the film does really well, as well, is the use of, there's a couple songs that, one of them in particular kind of comes back multiple times, When Johnny Comes Marching Home. And then, of course, kind of the more iconic end of the film set to We'll Meet Again. And so I think that music, that kind of set up the ending of the film like that. I do think that that works really well. And again, if you've seen any videos on my channel, I say this pretty much every single video. I love when a movie nails the ending. I think that this movie probably nailed the ending for what it was going for, and I think, I do appreciate the ending. I do appreciate that it's out there. It could have been, kind of a more boring ending, but it's a very kind of riveting and just kind of interesting ending that kind of leads you with maybe a couple questions, or kind of more so kind of questions about why we decided to kind of end the film like this. So I do appreciate the ending. I will say that kind of when I got to the end of this movie, the movie is only about an hour and a half, a little over an hour and a half long. I don't know necessarily if it all came together for me completely. It's kind of, as I watched it, I was kind of glad that I watched it, but I was kind of thinking at the end, I was like, I don't know if this all necessarily works. And so I don't know if this is a film that maybe, it requires multiple viewings to really kind of come around on it and to really, appreciate it a little bit more. I just think that there's some of the war room scenes, while they are beautifully shot, I don't know, sometimes they kind of carry on a little bit too long, or they I don't want to necessarily say don't add to the story, because obviously the whole thing is the story, but it just kind of, it didn't add anything to make me love it any more than I already was. And then obviously, kind of cutting away to some of the side plots, some of the side characters, obviously mainly with Mandrake. I don't know if it just all quite came together for me at the end, to the point where this was a film that, I clearly enjoyed and I clearly liked, but I don't know if it quite hit that level of that I loved this film. And so now we're going to ask those kind of the two questions that I want to ask at the end of each of these videos in this series, or each of the films in this series. The first is, do I consider this a classic? Is this a must-watch film? Is this a film that I recommend for you guys? And this, yeah, I would say it is a classic. I understand why it has that title. I understand why, a lot of people really love this film. Would I consider it like a must-watch for everyone? I would say watch this if you are interested in watching kind of the classic films, or if you're interested in watching just the kind of more influential and more important films like in cinema history, or if you're just kind of wanting to watch one of the greatest filmmakers in Stanley Kubrick. If you're just wanting to watch his entire filmography, I would recommend that you go and check this out. If you're a person who doesn't necessarily see a whole ton of movies, you don't watch a lot of movies, then maybe this is one that you might be okay kind of skipping. But again, if you are a person that really loves film and really loves watching just kind of the iconic and a more important and influential films in cinema history, then yes, I would recommend this as a film that I would consider a classic must-watch film. And then the next question that we're going to ask about all of these movies is that, will I watch this movie again? And I do think I will see this again. It might not be for a while. I might let a couple years go by and kind of not necessarily forget the film, but maybe just kind of forget some of the things that didn't work for me, and just try and kind of come into this film blind, a little more blind again in a couple years, and give it another shot. So I do think I will watch this again, but probably years down the line in the future, and hopefully on a second rewatch, maybe some of the things that didn't quite work for me this time around, will work for me a little bit more on an additional rewatch years from now in the future. And so for my rating of the film on Letterboxd, I'm kind of between two scores here. I was debating on giving it about a 3.5, but I think I'm just in recording this video and talking about it, I think I do like the film a little bit more than I thought I initially did. So I'm going to give this 4 out of 5 for Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. And that's it. Let me know down below in the comments below if what other Stanley Kubrick films I should watch. Obviously, again, at the beginning of this, I realized, obviously, I've only seen The Shining, and so now Dr. Strangelove, so I've seen 2. I think he has 12 or 13 movies, so let me know if I should check out any of his other films. Also, let me know down below in the comments if I should. I don't know if you saw my last video that I posted of ranking Christopher Nolan's filmography, but let me know if you think that maybe should Stanley Kubrick be the next director that I kind of do a ranking their entire filmography. It would be kind of interesting to, if we want to go that direction of kind of making Stanley Kubrick the next director in this series. When I made that Christopher Nolan ranked video, I kind of had a couple directors in mind of people that I, would be interested in kind of doing deep dives of their filmography. I wasn't necessarily thinking of Stanley Kubrick. He wasn't one of the ones that came to mind, but again, having just watched Doctor Strangelove now, I would be interested in kind of going in that path if that's a director that you guys would be interested in seeing kind of a rankings video of all of their filmography. So let me know if that is something you're interested in. Is Stanley Kubrick ranked? And then also down below in the comments, just let me know of any films that you consider classic must-watch films, and if I haven't seen them, that I'll consider watching them, or maybe I'll compile. One thing I was thinking about doing is just all of the recommendations I get from you guys, kind of compiling them into its own kind of wheel, and then maybe once we get enough kind of submissions from you guys, we'll do some a randomized a viewer recommendation. That's something that I'm interested in doing as well. So yeah, just let me know any of your all-time favorite films, anything you consider a classic film, and if I haven't seen it, then I'll kind of add it to that list or to my watch list of things to get to. So again, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and have a great day.